All right. So, our first review of the day is going to be for the series Legend of Korra, Book 3. This is Change here in the title of this season. So, if people remember our review of last time of season 2, that was Spirits here, of the events of what happened in that. So, at the end of that season, Korra basically put a door open to the spirit realm and the human realm and allowed now spirits and humans are coexisting in this world. How is that? How can they do coexist? It's causing a lot of trouble because you see the city of Republic is overrun by these huge vines and all these kind of spirits living there. A lot of people now are very, kind of hate the Avatar very much, or very, go like, she's kind of ruined things by doing that. What is kind of the goal of, these spirits being here in this world now. But a big positive from that has been that it caused the harmonic convergence, which basically unlocked airbenders. Airbenders which have been basically extinct for so many years. I mean, now you just to a point where Tenzin and his family were the only airbenders alive. Now, because of this harmonic convergence, and unlocked the airbending ability in all these people around the world. So you have Korra and Team Korra. They're going around the world, meeting all these different people, trying to recruit them to be, air nomads and to learn how to train to be airbenders at Tenzin's temple there. The main villains of this season are the Red Lotus, the opposite of the White Lotus. They are a group there meant to maintain peace and balance and all about protecting the Avatar. You have the Red Lotus, which is all about, I guess you could say they are anarchists. I guess would be a way to describe them there. Very much saying that there should be no leaders, there should be no authority over people. People should be able to kind of live how they want. They're very much going like, and that's kind of puts them in opposition to the Avatar because of that. And then you do have Korra there, who is all about the status quo, and they're about ripping down the status quo, ripping down world leaders. Especially when they meet or they go back to Bon Six-Se. And that's kind of an interesting moment because it opposes when we first saw Bon Six-Se in the Avatar: Last Airbender, where it's this huge, beautiful kingdom that's heavily reinforced. But now we see it here. There's like a higher level, and then there's like a lower level, extreme poverty there, where you have the real separation there of the utmost rich and then the absolute poor there in Bang Sing Se. So I'm gonna go pass it to Mike here. Mike, what are your thoughts on season 3 of Legend of Korra?
Yeah. Season 3 of Legend of Korra. I think this not only is it the most interesting season, I say it's probably the season I think is probably the best, and I go to the most whenever I rewatch Korra. Granted, I've only rewatched it like 2 to maybe 3 times. But yeah, season 3, like I think a lot stronger than the previous season. I love how it's just a direct continuation from like, okay, Spirit World's open. What does that mean? Airbenders are suddenly coming back, and it's Korra has to know she has to leave. She's pretty much forced out of the Republic City, and we see like, oh, she's going to help and try rebuild the Air Kingdom. And along the way, we come across a very different kind of antagonist for this series with Zahir and his little ragtag group. Because unlike all the other groups who had like funding and militaries and all these people, it's really just 4 guys and eventually like a bunch of other like dozens of followers who we've never seen before. But like the main focus is on the 4 crew, and they serve as kind of like a anti-Avatar gang, like almost like an evil version of like the original gang from the first show. And it's really cool seeing them clash with Korra. It's like also just seeing this is kind of like a road trip season where they go from different place to different place to try and get more airbenders. And it's like, yeah, there's some really great action in this. I will say, while I do think this is overall the best season of Korra, it probably suffers the most from having too many characters to a degree. Where this one, well, each season of Korra had plenty of characters. This one introduces literally dozens by the thresholds, which gets it's very hard for them to share the limelight, especially as it goes on. With Korra's original crew mostly just becoming kind of like uh, background characters for the most part.
Mhm.
um, but yeah, overall, I would say this is probably the strongest season of Korra. What do you think thus far?
So I do think it's better than season 2. And I think maybe it's even slightly better than season 1.
Hmm.
I do like, the villains in this season. So I think the villains this season are probably the second best villains. I think where we get to Kavira, uh,
Yeah.
next season, probably the best of the whole series.
Hmm.
When we get to her, we'll get to her, in book 4 there, but she is introduced here in this book,
Yeah.
in book 3. So I do think there's that. Zahir and kind of their whole plans. I mean, it seems like a lot of the villains this season, it's almost like the villains in season 3 with Zahir and his kind of group, the Red Lotus, are kind of combinations of the villains from season 1 and season 2 because they both have the same thing of like, hey, they want
Yeah.
to tear down things and bring in this
Hmm.
usher in this new world. And, they think that there's an imbalance of things of power because the Avatar is so powerful and the ultimate decider of things. And we want to get rid of that. And their ultimate plan is to kill the Avatar, especially kill her when she's in her avatar state, so there can be no more avatar
Hmm.
in the future. So I thought that was pretty good, like focusing on that in their kind of plan to do that, and then poison her at first, and then kind of weaken her so she's forced to go into the state, and then they all attack her at once, as we saw in the clip there. So I did. There was that, and a lot of interesting things. I mean, as far as action goes, I mean, I don't really remember much from season 4, but I think this has the best action of the whole
Mm.
series, maybe even the whole, Avatar series as a
Yeah.
whole.
I will say by and by as a whole, I think Korra has better action than Avatar.
Yeah, yeah, it does. I think it does as well. And then here, and especially with the group of Red Lotus, so you have Zahir, who was one of the people who became an airbender after the whole harmonic conversions. He was the people that got his powers unlocked.
Mhm.
What did you think it was a little unbelievable how good he was at airbending?
I think I wouldn't say he was particularly good at airbending. I'd say the only thing is like he's kind of like a he's basically a weeb in this universe of like he's really obsessed with airbending culture and all this stuff, and he's never really gotten a chance to be part of it. And so from like the when he goes up against like a lot of people who aren't like used to fighting airbenders or even just like airbending culture in general, he has a distinct advantage over them. But the one time he fights like an actual airbending master, Tenzin, like the whole fight, like Tenzin is just knocking Zahir like on his ass just several times over. And I think that was a really cool detail. Especially kind of like Zahir is kind of like a he kind of serves as like a very dark reflection of like Aang or Tenzin of like he has well he's bald, he's also very stocky, but he's also wearing like entirely muted clothes. And yeah, this fight of like yeah, see Zahir's even like running for Tenzin several parts in this match. Like if this was just a straight 1-on-1, Tenzin probably would have won very easily. It isn't until like Zahir's entire group gains up on Tenzin does Zahir really get an advantage,
Mm.
and which is a cool detail. Yeah, it's also like they all have very like unique bending styles for the most part, which is uh, cool. I'm glad originally they planned on making Minhwa a bloodbender, and I'm glad they decided to do something a bit different, of making her paraplegic with water bending. Uh, and we do get more of Tenzin's kids, Kaya and Boomy in this. Again, getting more spotlight than Mako, Bola, and Asami. But yeah, her fight scenes are very cool and very like threatening. It's interesting to see more of the what we would consider the passive elements as just straight up like villains in this series. Because usually with the antagonists and Avatar, it's usually Earthbenders or Firebenders for the most part. Here it's like no, waterbending can be pretty dangerous, and especially if it's like used by like a bad person. Uh, yeah, we get to see more like we get to see the Korra go out and try and train for more elements and stuff like that, which is very cool as opposed to well, Aang's whole arc is about like him training all that stuff. He doesn't really super seek new like bending styles on screen in the same way Core does to the
Mm.
extent, which is again another nice contrast between them. And man, yeah. Also speaking of like Core, she's like in a lot of her fights as well. She feels a lot more like on the back of her heels. Of like if something goes wrong, she can seriously get hurt. And we do see that a lot more with the next season. But this one, it's like, oh man, like especially with how it ends, it's like, man, Cora's really taking it as opposed to A. It might be because A was like 12, and you don't want to see a 12-year-old get like slammed into a wall that hard. But uh, like, yeah, it's nice to see a protagonist that like takes her licks and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Aang, there was that point where he almost did die. He got that
Mhm.
lightning in his back, and he almost did die
That's
there.
true.
So there's some moments like if I get what you're saying. I mean, yeah, Korra does get, sometimes she
Mhm.
does get beat pretty bad, and then the fact that this group really works in unison with their
Yeah.
attacks there, and you mentioned the unique styles they have, like the one woman, the waterbender, has got no arms, and she uses the water bending to have arms. That's
Mhm.
pretty cool. I like that a lot. Then you also have the combustion bender there, which we've seen
Yeah.
before. We saw that in the Avatar: Last Airbender, which Zuko even mentions, like, oh yeah, I hired
Yeah.
combustion bender to kill the Avatar once. Yeah, you have that, and then also the lava bender, which we learned that Bolin, instead of being a metal bender, he's a lava bender
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and I guess.
Yeah. Oh, go on.
Oh, I was gonna say that, if you're an earthbender, I guess you can either be an earthbender and a metal bender or a lava
Mhm.
bender, I guess,
Yeah,
so.
well, yeah. Originally, the in the first Avatar show, the only one who was this was even the directors talked about that. Originally, the only one who could use lava bending was the Avatar. As for them, it was like a mix between fire and like earth bending, but they decided to change that in the Korra. It's like actually it's more of an earth bending sub technique. So it's
Mm,
usually either lava bending or metal bending that you can probably dive into if you're given enough training. But lava bending's like especially rare, as we find out later on.
mm, yeah, and it makes for a cool effect, on
Mhm.
screen, a lot of the lava bending, it makes for a really, really, really
Yeah,
cool effect.
yeah. I think we didn't mention this the last two times we talked, but Core does also get away with a lot more deaths, or like very heavily implied deaths in the show as opposed to Aang. I mean, Avatar. It's not that Avatar never had anything like Jet dying off screen, but usually that was very peaceful and stuff like that. Here we like pretty much hear the deaths off screen, but like what happens, especially with what happens with the Peely and like the combustion lady, where she just gets the metal wrapped around her head, and then you hear like a clang or like a and you just see Zahir looking. It's like, oh, her top half is gone.
Oh, and then you also have that moment with the Earth Queen too at the end,
Yeah, yeah.
where he, uses the air bending to basically just, like,
Mhm.
suck the air, out of her lungs and basically kill. Let me see if I can pull up that clip there.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does that. But you mentioned oh, here's the clip right here. Yeah. This is pretty deadly. I mean, this is pretty,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way they especially the eyes, the way that's
Mhm.
kinda going.
Yeah.
Henry Rollins does a really great
Oh,
job
yeah, yeah, very good.
with the voice here, who Henry Rollins, people might know. He was Black Flag, lead singer there. He was also the voice of the villain in Batman Beyond, the villain there in that.
Oh, the radioactive guy?
Uh, was he? Or he was? No, he was the terrorist guy, the one with the bombs, I think, in Batman Beyond, if I remember
Okay.
correctly.
There's
If
a
I
lot
remember,
of villains in Batman
yeah,
Beyond.
if I remember correctly. But yeah, really good job with the voice work here. You mentioned the metal bending. We do get. We talked about it. I talked about it last time we discussed book two, but there wasn't a lot of Lin Beifong, but we do get a lot of that in here in
Yeah.
book three, where we actually go to visit her sister, and then
The
her sister's
entire Bayfon family.
yeah, her sister has formed this like metal city, basically their own metal version of Bon Say, I guess.
Mhm.
What'd you think about a lot of that?
I really liked it. Uh, can be kind of hard to track all of the characters and stuff like that. Opal was very fun and enduring, but like yeah, Lynn's backstory was very good, uh, and how that kind of like resolved ultimately with her like kind of needing to reconnect with her sister. It would seem more of like the past stuff of Lynn and like her family's past, and compared to Aang, who had like a lot of stuff in his plate, but like the fan conversation was like, "Why is Aang a bad dad?" It's like he's not a bad dad. He was just a person who had like flaws and like couldn't like had an impossible task. Toph was a bad mom. Like she gave her kids way too much freedom, and like she kind of let the other one get away with like anything she wanted to, and wasn't until like she basically robbed a jewelry store or a bank. It's pretty ambiguous, but like did she suffer like the least consequences, which is you're going to live with your rich grandparents.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you see, so there's some flashback stuff that happens. We have to see like uh Lynn in her kind of early 20s, I guess, or late teens years,
Probably early 20s.
early 20s. I don't know how much older than she is than her sister.
Mhm.
I can look it up real quick, but
Well,
I'm
they have a different dad, which is another interesting thing.
yeah, they have a different dad there. And I don't think the dad is ever brought up in the show.
He's mentioned once in the next season. Uh, Avatar does this weird thing of like in the comics, especially like they'll introduce someone and be like, "Oh, is this potentially Toph's husband and or slash baby father?" It's never really. It does kind of seem like a thing of like, "Ooh, read the next comic," or yeah,
Raven from Trudy said, "Damn, she
yeah,
thinks she could live in
pretty much.
Bel Air." Yeah, yeah, because her sister's name is Lynn, right? Lynn. Oh, I mean, not. I mean, what's her sister's name?
Oh my god.
Let me see if I can find it real quick. But
Yeah,
yeah. So she,
Padma. No, 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 it's not Padma. That's Tencent's wife.
yeah. Let me see really quick. Su Yin.
Okay, yeah,
Su
that's not.
Yin
Yeah,
is her sister. Yeah.
and she built this beautiful life of like 8 kids and one adopted kid.
Mm.
Uh, and yeah, and it's a cool thing of like how we get introduced to Korea early on, and how granted she's introduced in a very menacingly way of like, okay, so she's a villain or something. Of like how it's like shot from like a lower angle where it's like it's at a point where it might as well be like a violin string at the very end.
Oh
uh
yeah,
yeah, like
because they
call me
do.
Korea.
Yeah, they do such a job of, like, the camera zooming in on her face and everything
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
So yeah, this is Toph, and then this are her 2 daughters, Ian
Mhm,
and Lynn,
mhm,
that you kinda have here. And yeah, so, yeah, she went on to she led this life, and she traveled kinda around the world and,
mhm,
met her husband and then formed this family and built this city and had
mhm.
kids and,
Yeah, a metal
uh
bending, a city entirely made of metal, which must get very hot in the summer.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that sun must be bouncing off them.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, did you think there was a little too much with the family of the Beifong family, or
I think it's more emblematic of a problem Korra has in its entirety of that it has a gigantic cast, like almost like a One Piece sized cast. But unlike One Piece, where they're all able to like kind of because One Piece is so long and every character gets their moment to really shine and they're still relevant. Like a lot of characters in Korra kind of don't get their moments, or they get their moment and they're kind of just relegated to like kind of background characters for the most part. Uh, I've brought this up before, but like Korra's team, like Asami gets this the worst of like the only thing she really does this season is help Korra on that airship thing and help her kind of like reach the destination that they were in the past. But yeah, other than that, there's really like nothing for her to do. She doesn't even like really fight any of the big goons because Ming Hua and Gazan are delegated to Bolin and Mako, and you think she'd like get a fight against Peely, but like just how Avatar works, benders are mostly just support characters.
mm, some? I feel like we didn't really get that much of her this as far as like yeah, a lot of her things there. And then when we lead into season 4, this is where it leads into kind of
Oh, season 4, she has nothing.
and when they end up in a relationship together, spoiler alert, they ended up in a
Yeah,
relationship together
it's 10
there.
years old.
But like a lot of their interactions happen off screen because at the end
Yeah.
of this season, Cora's kind of you know very much in a bad place, in a
Mhm,
wheelchair, after what Red Lotus did to her, trying to
mhm,
kill her, poisoned her. And you see that kind of she started to form a relationship with Asami through letters, like they started to write each other back and forth.
mhm,
And that's never a lot of that's not really shown on
yeah,
screen. So it doesn't really because when from I remember when they do end up together at the end and they walk away together through the portal, it's kind of like, huh? I was like,
yeah.
well, a lot of
It's
that
it
isn't really shown on screen though.
season 4 also has a weird problem of, like, moments where if they do wanna set this couple up, there are moments where it's like, "Okay, well, Asami should be here as well." Like, Asami should be with the Air Kids or with Korra, but it's like, "Oh, we need to search for Korra," and it's like Asami's like, "I'll just stay in the background. I got stuff with my dad." Uh, Weirdly enough, rewatching this, I rewatched this, like, not too long ago, maybe a few months ago, but Korra has way more chemistry with Opal than she does with Asami. Just the one scene where she's teaching her is like, okay, I can see this being a couple, weirdly enough, as compared to uh, Korra and Asami.
And it doesn't. Does she end up with Bolin
Yeah,
Opal?
yeah, she gets with Bolin. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, it becomes a bit weird in season 4 when Bolin becomes a fascist soldier, but
Yeah, so yeah, Opal, who is the daughter of Sunya, who's another airbender. So
Mhm,
that's right. The reason why they go to Limbe, when
mhm,
they go to the Metal Kingdom, is because
yeah,
Opal is a
mhm,
airbender. There. So yeah, yeah, a lot of that relationship stuff I think is with
yeah.
her and Asami. I guess you're supposed to see the hints planted, I guess, here in this season a little bit more.
To be fair, I will say I don't think Avatar is great with romance in general.
Right.
So I don't think it's fair to hold Korra and Asami to a different standard than, like, I don't know, Zuko and Mai or something. It's like they're both like relationships to me.
Mm,
Uh, but it's like, yeah, you don't want, like, kind of be weird about it.
yeah.
And to be like, it did kind of open the gates a bit to, like, more uh like queer couples and stuff in, like, mainstream animation. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I do know people who do stand for them pretty hard.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Um, yeah. What's something can to you? You mentioned like it's such a big cast. People kind of get kind of short end of the stick here. Mako, maybe
Yeah, Mako Bolin.
Sami.
Mhm.
Well, you think that's some of the weakest stuff in this season?
Yeah, I think that's some of the weakest stuff. I love, well, because it's like we have to see stuff with, like, Tenzin and, like, how he's teaching the other kids. Oh, I forgot they also introduced Kai. That's another character, uh, who's another Iraq light. We have to have his, like, little adventure with Tenzin's daughter Jinora, uh, and, like, how they get together, kind of, and date, and we see their misadventures and stuff. Uh, and yeah, it's just it's a lot of stuff for them to balance, especially with how long they get. Uh, yeah, yeah, I would, yeah, I do like how their kingdom is framed as this. It's like, oh yeah, a monarchy is bad, but also, like, how she's not, like, incredibly cunning, but the Earth Queen knows enough to, like, kind of move the place so it's not the same, like, Lake Lao guy. Because basically, after Team Avatar, like, discovered the whole thing with Bossing Say and, like, Lake Lao guy, they're like, well, of course they're not going to, like, go to the exact same place as they did, like, 50 years ago.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah. So he's
yeah. What do you think of them trying to connect Zahir and the Red Lows to Tarlok? Wait, who was the villain of? Was Unalak the villain of last season?
yeah, wasn't it Unalaq?
It was,
Unalaq was
yeah,
her uncle.
yeah, Unalak, because they said, oh, Unalak's also, he was a member of the Red Lotus before he wanted to become Dark Avatar Satan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like that was kind of unnecessary. I like the idea of, like, the Red Lotus are just a group of, like, rando extremists.
Yeah. You saying what I feel about kind of like the connection
Yeah,
there?
like them trying to connect it to, like, oh, it's connected to last season as well, or
I didn't think that was really necessary for them to do that. Like you said, they could have been just a group of like extremists who had this, ideology
mhm,
of, like you said, anarchy and taking everything down, and there being very much anti-Avatar. Because Unalaq, I mean, he didn't really his. I mean, well, I mean, his. We talked about this in the last review, but his ideology was kind of confusing because it's like,
yeah,
okay, I want to take over the world, but I also want there to be balance, and that's why I'm trying to bring back the
spirits.
the dark avatar, and then so spirits and humans can live together, but I want to take over. It's
Yeah,
like, okay, what the fuck you really want to do
yeah.
here?
I have heard of some like people have a contention with kind of Zahir's ideology of like, well, it's not what anarchism really is, but I don't think Zahir's like really meant to fully represent anarchism. I think he's met like people like, oh, social or are you communist anarchism? I think it's more so like he's more of like a almost like a religious zealot who does have somewhat of a point, but also like his thing is like, oh, we just need to kill presidents and leaders. Like he's that guy like on the internet or Twitter. Like let's just get rid of like, the politicians we don't like. It's like, okay, but like what's your plan? Like do you want to start a community or something? It's like, no, just the strong will live. So
Yeah.
yeah. My takeaway is Sahir would have been there on January 6th. That's why he would have been there. He would have been like, storming the Capitol.
He's been flying. He's been flying over the Capitol.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. I mean, maybe with a little bit better writing, I could definitely think he could have been one of the top villains
Mhm.
in the whole Avatar series
Yeah.
there, as far as what he is. Because like I say, he's like kind of like a weeb. He's very much into the air acolyte type of thing. Like he was a monk. I think they say he
Mhm.
was a monk beforehand. And then also why he is so good at fighting is because he did have extensive martial arts training. He also does have that under his belt. Um,
Yeah.
and then he, knows all about the teachings of old airbending masters and everything. But it's just, I don't know. I mean, if you have all that, if you read all that teachings and then all that, like this is the conclusion you kind of come
Mhm.
to, I guess. But I don't know. People have
Yeah. Yeah.
read their own things into things and make
Mhm.
funky conclusions out of everything. So
It is an
there,
interesting way to have a kind of a villain that's associated with like the Air Nation without, bringing back airbenders as a whole as like, oh, this airbender from the past is here. It's like, no, it's like a guy misreading the context of like someone's scripture to like fit his like personality and ideology. But yeah, I would say like his last episode, like a lot of stuff comes out and like, kind of becomes a weird villain, especially when he's like pinned at the end and he's just kind of ranting like a lunatic, which, it kind of reveals uh like, oh, he was just kind of a crazy person this whole time. And to be fair, the next season does also uh uh put his plan more in the context of like how he reflects it now. And I'm glad they didn't kill Zahir off, because all the other villains have been killed off. And Zahir's whole crew just gets floored in this.
yeah, everyone. Yeah, I mean, everyone's gone but him.
Yeah, yeah.
There, and she doesn't take away his bending.
No, no. I don't think she knows how to anymore, because of how the poison worked. Her connection got severed. And Aang was the one who knew how to take away the bending, because like she doesn't know Aang anymore. So
Okay, yeah, because she did that in the first. Well, she brought people's bending back.
she brought people's bending back.
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
first season.
Does that raise like weird moral and ethical questions? Yes, but like don't think about it too much because it's the season finale.
Yeah, I mean, it kinda undoes a lot of the stuff in this first
Yeah.
season because it's like, "Oh, people's spending is gone," but it's like, "Oh, well, don't worry, I can magically put my thumb on your forehead and boom, you can get it back."
I was watching. I remember years ago I watched Doug Walker's vlogs on like Korra and Avatar,
Mm,
and I'm not sure if it was him or like his brother, but they mentioned like I kind of wish Korra, not Korra, like could only like restore her own bending, and like the other characters couldn't. She couldn't restore other people's bending. Like, what if? Because it's if Korra's all about change and adaptation, like the show. What if like Lynn, instead of like getting her metal bending back, she has to learn how to use more like steampunk technology and stuff like
mm,
that, and like even like Equalist gloves or like even like Equalist like grapple stuff, as opposed to like, oh, you're an earthbender again.
mm. Yeah, that might have been a little bit more interesting
Mhm.
there, instead of just, yeah, having everybody's bending just kinda come back there because it's I mean, it's really serious. I mean, when that kinda
Yeah.
happens, and it's like such a dramatic moment,
Mhm.
there
Yeah,
for both
yeah, yeah.
characters.
I will say I do think Amon's a more iconic villain of the show of Korra, but like
Mm,
I think Zahir and his whole crew are like way cooler when they're all together and like working, because they do really come off as like an evil version of like Team Avatar, as opposed to like I don't know, Vatu and Unalak and his two weird kids.
I mean, yeah, the Rebels do make for a good like Dark Avengers type of
Mhm.
setup there with them, and especially seeing like an evil Airbender character we never really seen that before.
Mhm.
Of like the like you said, him sucking the air out of somebody's body that
Yeah.
we never seen. Like we've heard about Avatar Airbenders can do that, but not actually have to see it. So that was pretty good that they actually did show that.
Mhm.
What do you think about the stuff in Bang Sing Se when they go there and they meet?
I I like it once they all return. I think kind of the initial stuff for them to do is kind of it feels a bit padded to a degree of like, oh, it was Earth Queen, all her stuff, and it's like working for the Earth Queen, and like, Mako and Bolin are chasing Kai. And that feels a bit like, it kind of felt like a bit like season one water of Avatar, of like there's definitely like filler episodes and stuff like that, or filler like episodes with a lot more fat in them. Like, oh, these are just fun side episodes. Like, yeah, it's fine, but it's like they're also technically really important to the plot. So it's like, yeah, it just didn't really work for me. But like once they go back, I really like it. It's like, oh no, Boss Season Say has fallen. The Earth Queen is dead. People are like looting the streets.
Mm.
uh,
Yeah, I mean they're kind of happy. Some people
yeah.
are joyful. The walls have been broken down.
Yeah. I do also like that we see Jin, Mako and Bolan's grandmother, and like she's like, because she's like in her 80s, she's still like loyal to like the Earth Queen. It's like it's kind of like the Pope, or like now, or like any old like potentially like you know political dictator that's like, oh, some people are definitely still like hung up on them, like, and she like kisses her fingers and she puts it on the on the frame. It's like
Painting.
that. Yeah, it I like that they're showing a bit of nuance. Like, yeah, some older people are gonna think of this kind of stuff.
I like going back to Bang Sing Se is seeing that contrast because we haven't been back there since there
Mhm.
being really much of the first Avatar series and seeing like what happened to that city and seeing the change that's happened, the new leader that's kind of taken over, this evil kind of leader
Mhm.
that's there, and so that was kind of I think very very good to see that, and then also you get in touch with a little bit of Bolin's history, Mako's history there, their family, their kind of background there, because they haven't ever been to Bang Sing Se
No.
before, so that was their first time ever meeting their grandmother, meeting their extended family, their cousins, and
Mhm.
things like that. And then the reason they do go there is because of they hear all these airbenders are here in Bang Sing Se, but the queen is capturing them, kidnapping them, and making them. She wants to form an airbender army that fights for the Earth Kingdom there.
It's definitely that era of like any country like that that had like a secret police and stuff like that. And it's like the city itself is just full of shit. But it's like, yeah, like what they can do now is basically send police to beat the shit out of their citizens and take them.
Yeah, Raiden Venturity says, "Haven't seen the show, but is this part kind of a Berlin Wall type situation?"
China was definitely more of an influence, in all honesty. But like, yeah, you can compare it to Berlin Wall, or places like Russia and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Any final thoughts for Legend?
I really, even though the climax fight isn't probably my favorite, because I do not even remember how they beat Zahir. Uh, but I really love how it ends, and it does kind of reflect kind of the strongest aspects of Core to me, and as well as like some of the more divisive decisions against some people. Of like, of course, about change, and like Korra ends this season in a wheelchair, poison, and well, the world is safe from like Zahir. Uh, the Avatar has to be in a wheelchair now, but like now that the Avatar's in a wheelchair, the more airbenders. Janora gets her head shaven and gets her uh, airbending tattoos to
Mhm.
signify that she is also a master, like Tenzin. And the air, unlike instead of like being stationary in their temple, they will go out and they will also aid people in a way like the Avatar did. And I know this would never happen, but I kind of wish it ended there, like the whole show. If it ended on season 3 and there was no continuation, that would have been like that would have been so peak to me. Like it would have been like amazing and like bittersweet. And
Mm.
but kids would definitely be crying.
Yeah. So this is how they kind of beats it here. That so all the airbenders they joined up, formed like a big wind tunnel, and then they kind of sucked him down there. And then she slammed him down.
Yeah.
And then Bolin, I think it was Bolin,
Yeah,
or
he puts a sock in it.
he like puts a trap on him, like the Earth. Yeah, put him like in a cage there.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, oh no,
Oh
Yin.
yeah,
So Yin did that. Yeah. So you
yeah,
can see that there. Um, yeah.
yeah.
So,
But
but
overall, maybe my favorite season of the show. Uh,
mm,
what about you?
I have to watch season 4 just to get refresh my
Mhm.
memory on that to see if that would be my favorite one. But I think season 3 is the strongest one
Yeah.
there of the series with the villains, what kind of happens here with Korra at the end, especially it's very kind of a little bit bittersweet there of her being in a wheelchair and the look on her face there. We see her she's still suffering from the poison. Like how is she gonna continue? And she does get I mean, she does face a lot of hard roads, I mean, for
Yeah.
sure. A lot of gets beat up quite a bit. But you also did have that memo Janora did become, airbending master, which was also kind of sweet there.
Mhm.
And also a really good moment. Yeah, the action sequences in this season I think are really good, especially with
Yeah.
the Red Lotus. And this is core here at the end of season 3, where she's
She's got
she's
rough.
got it rough there. I mean, everybody got kind of beat up. Yeah, Kaya got beat up a little
Yeah.
bit. Boomy got beat up
Mhm.
there quite a bit, but
Tenzin recovered quickly despite being tortured, basically.
yeah, I mean, I guess it's that secret
Yeah.
airbending technique there.
Oh, sorry, really quick. J.K. Simmons growing this role. It's a kind of a performance we don't hear from him a lot, of him being like a very gentle but still firm kind of father figure and teacher. But still, always a pleasure to have J.K. Simmons.
Oh yeah, oh,
Yeah, very interesting comparing him to like maybe his, the one he might be known for now, like the biggest voice role he might be known for now, of just Ollie Man, who's just a terrifying person, very complex but awful person. But
yeah. I mean, he does a lot. I mean, he's a
yeah,
true working man actor. TV
oh
shows,
yeah,
commercials, movies. He's in everything.
hmm
Uh, yeah. Random sure say he recovered so fast because he got waterbender and firebender and do icy hot therapy on him. But yeah, I mean, you see kind of like, where it is at the end of season 3 there. But yeah, the action scenes I thought were very good. I think the villains here are good, even though some of the ideology is like,
a little, yeah,
it's a little sloppy the way they kind of do it, but it's fine. So yeah, I think this is I would give it a strong tune in, maybe lowish peak.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
what would be your rating?
I'd give it a tune in as well.
Okay. Yeah. So tune in, and I give it a strong tune in for Legend of Korra, Book
Mhm.
3, Change. And then we also have Book 4 coming up, which is the last one, Balance,
Nice.
which is the last one coming up. So yeah, one more.